In this video, we're going to demonstrate building a simple form from scratch using the form builder on the Luminos.AI platform. You can see when we click the new form button from the form library, we get this untitled form, so we'll go ahead and name it quickly. And we get by default just a single blank section. So we're going to go ahead and give this section a title and then start adding some elements to it. You can see our menu of element types. We can add subsections up to 4 layers deep. We can add informative text blocks. We can add simple text responses, multi and single select radio buttons, file attachments, and attestations, which is an approval signature block. We also have technical elements like a bias analysis tester, and we have status change elements for the document, such as approved or denied. So we're going to start out with a couple of text responses to sort of frame this, the analysis that we're doing here. So in this case, we want to document the use case and ask the submitters who are filling this document out to give us a little bit of background on the model that's going to be evaluated. And perhaps we will also give them some guidance as to how to do that by clicking on our advanced button here. And we'll add some instructions. The notes and instructions are elements that will appear while the submitter is filling out the form, but will not necessarily appear in the final exported version. So down below that, we'll add one more text response box. And you can see an example of what the notes and instructions are going to look like, as well as the space for the response. So we'll ask them one more question in this very simple form for demonstration purposes. We'll ask them about the provenance of the data set that they're going to drop in. All right, so now that we've got those basic questions set up, we'd like to actually put a place in for them to do the bias testing using Luminos's proprietary technical bias testing element. So we're going to put that in a new section. So I'm going to add a section here for bias testing. But we're going to take this and not make it a subsection, but its own section at level 1 by clicking our tab in and tab out buttons. And so you can see I can move things in and out here. So we'll put that at the root level, and then we will go ahead and add a bias testing element below it. Now this bias testing element is a very simple appearing element when you build it, but you can see in the example of the bias test run video that there's quite a bit of configuration you can have in terms of how the bias test runs, and it produces quite complex output that covers a variety of use cases. But we'll give them some very simple static instructions for the form. But we will also give them some context guidance. So for example, if your users have internal reference material that you'd like them to review or links to other documents, you can put those sorts of things in the notes and instructions as well. So we're going to add, once they run the bias test, we're going to ask them to provide some reflection in a simple text response. So in this case, we'll give it an explanatory title and give them some guidance on what sorts of information we would like to see in the reflection on the bias results, including observations of how that test went and maybe any specific tuning to the model or tuning to the training data that they needed to achieve an acceptable result. And then finally, we'll ask them to, when they are satisfied with the performance testing, they can run this multiple times and update their reflections. When they're satisfied with the performance testing, we would like them to mark this document ready for review. So I went ahead and created a section for the reviewer and approval, but I realized that I want to go back and add in an earlier question for them to mark it ready for review. So I'm going to do the world's simplest multi-select down here, and that multi-select question will allow them to simply say whether this document is ready for review. And that will complete the submitter's responsibility for this document. So this, we're going to just have a single option. It's just going to be a checkbox for them when it's ready. But I don't actually want this in the approval section. I want this up here in the section above. And so I'm actually going to dedent it by using my tab out, which puts it back at our root level. And then I'm going to use my move up button to move it into this section. You can see that as I'm creating things, they're auto numbering. We've got 2A and 2B here. And if I just indent this one here, now it's 2C and it's going to be in my second section. So once they've marked it ready for review, now I'm ready for the approval stage. For purposes of this document, we'll do a simple attestation signature block. And we'll give that a title, and we will give it a simple statement that you can tune up for your governance team's approval. So, important thing to note here is this section, we actually don't want this to be filled out by the submitters, by the people who are running the model and are providing data and certifying the outputs of the data. We actually want this to be reviewed by our governance team. So I'm going to go ahead and change the availability of this field to, you can see, to the reviewer icon, which means that only reviewers will be able to see and edit this document, or this element in the document. As you can see from the note here, the elements above will be visible to all the users, both the submitters and the reviewers, but only editable by the submitters. So we have a little bit of separation of access here. And then I will add a final element, which is our approved workflow mark. And when we go build this into a form with rules, we can actually have this approval element triggered by the signature block of the attestation. We can have this entire approval block triggered by the mark for ready for review. And so you can build in some of your governance workflow into this form. And that is all we're going to build into the form today. So we now have a simple bias testing form with 3 sections: model, background, and context, with a couple of text entry fields, bias testing with a technical element, text entry field, and a simple trigger field, and then an approval section with a electronic signature block and an automated or to be automated approval form. So we'll go ahead and save this one and exit, and then in our next video we will build some rules into this form.